was in Memphis earlier this year preparing for MLK 50. And we had an opportunity to sit down with Bill Lucy.
All right, folks, back to that Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
So let's check this out. So let's say you are here and you're taking photos or things along those lines, but then you want to be able to print your photos. So what you could do is you could utilize one of our sponsors, freeprints.com. They are one of the top photo services, bar none, more than 100,000 five-star ratings. You can download their app from Google Play or even from the iTunes store as well. And again, for a very nominal fee, you can get 1,000 prints of 4x6s. And so again, a lot of people still want to use actual photos, and because as opposed to just always being able to email somebody or text it to them. And so what you do is download the app, freeprints.com, download their app. Then you're able to actually print photos directly from Instagram, from Twitter, or from Facebook as well. And so for me, look, I got lots of fans, and so they want me to autograph photos. A little hard to autograph a digital photo, and so use freeprints.com and do this here. When they ask how'd you hear about it, put in the code Roland. Put in the code Roland. That's a special code that you use, so they know exactly that our viewers, our fans, are actually utilizing the service. So again, freeprints.com. Download the app from Google Play, from iTunes as well.
Now it's back to your Roland Martin Unfiltered video.
For many of you, you likely have never heard of Bill Lucy. We think about our civil rights greats. Of course, we know about Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We know about Andrew Young. We know about Hosea Williams and Reverend Jackson. We know about, to some, Diane Nash and others. But the reality is, there were other people, the likes of Reverend Dr. James Lawson and Bill Lucy, who played a huge role when it came to the issue of civil rights. Ask anybody in the labor movement, and they know exactly who Bill Lucy is. And so here was our conversation that took place at the National Civil Rights Museum with the great labor leader, Bill Lucy.
Bill, being in here, being Memphis, the meetings, the conversations, all of these things, what does it bring you back to?
Well, it brings me back, Roland, to a point in my life where I learned the value of men who worked hard, yet the system denied them an opportunity just to be men. And I look at the photographs on the wall and think back as to what these men risked just to be treated with respect and dignity. And for me, it made the argument that I was one of the lucky ones, really sort of standing on their shoulders, having an opportunity to not only help them be better men, but helping workers in general understand what it meant to struggle for just an opportunity to raise a family, to be a breadwinner, and to be treated with respect and dignity for the work that you did. And that's an incredibly humbling experience. But it also provided me with an opportunity to be able to talk this message and take this message and this movement to other people in other places.
Where were you, in 68? Were you based here? Were you working elsewhere? How did you come to play a role in the sanitation workers' strike and what was happening in Memphis?
I was assigned here from Detroit, Michigan, the day of the strike. I arrived here the night of the 11th and was on the line with the men as they decided not to go to work the morning of the 12th. So from day one, I was here. The strike lasted 67 days. I had the highest parking bill for short-term parking in the history of the organization. I parked at the Detroit airport short-term because it looked like it was only be 2 or 3 days. I came back 67 days with a $500 short-term parking bill. So, this was for not just black workers, but the lowest paid of black workers, an incredible struggle that they decided to take. It was not something that the union decided for them. They had simply spent enough time working with a lack of respect that they felt themselves they were entitled to, and they decided what they were going to do. And In contrast to a lot of the glory statements, what they said was, we want two things. We want to build a union, and we want the workers to afford that union so it could do what we wanted it to do. And that was the story that underlined this whole struggle. And for myself and other staff people, we learned a valuable lesson from them. I cherish the time I had to work with these men and respect them as men, which was a part of their struggle.
What was it about them that was different than other folks you worked with who were trying to fight for their labor rights? Was it something different about them?
There was something fundamentally different about them. There's that piece in the Bible that talks about the poor being with you always, but nobody ever said they're going to be the same group. These were men who recognized that they had a job to do. They was proud to do it. They had families to raise. They were committed to raising their families with all of the difficulties that they experienced. They simply wanted to be treated as men and respected for what they did. There's an incredible religious community. Men committed to showing up every morning, working very hard, irritated by the fact that they couldn't get a simple problem solved. We weren't talking about 50 cents more an hour or $5 more. We were just simply talking about the issues that generated disrespect in them as they worked. And they felt that the organization they were trying to form would really give them help in addressing some of these issues. I mean, they didn't think it guaranteed victory, but they thought that it gave them a voice in those decisions that affected their work life. And ultimately, I guess, their social life also.
Where did the I am a man come from?
Well, we were about 3 to 4 weeks into the strike. This was not an economic strike. This was a strike about respect and about being treated with dignity. And
because when I talked to someone, they said they couldn't take bathroom breaks. They couldn't take. It was several things they talked about. They had nothing. It wasn't about money.
No, they couldn't wash up. At the end of the day, they had to go home just like they had worked all day. There was no such thing as lunch breaks. I mean, you had to. It was just a bad situation. We reflected, and not only poor management, but poor acceptance of the responsibility of management. And these men were paying the price for those who supervised them, lacking either in commitment or sensitivity. And we tried to think through what is it that would reflect not only their commitment to this, but what is it that motivated them. There was a white pastor of the church, Cleveland Temple, a young fellow by the name of Malcolm Blackburn. After one of the real difficult days, he and I were tasked with trying to come up with some slogan that would symbolize this. So many of the pastors, so many of the community leaders had talked about the difficulties that these men work with once they themselves learned. And so we took some of their speeches, some of their slogans, some of their comments, and we just put a whole lot of words on the table to try and see what we could come up with that would be simple and short. So after maybe 2 hours worth of working with it, we came up with the slogan, I am a man. And it sort of reflected what we thought their commitment to this struggle was. They simply wanted to be treated as men. And, you know, across the South, you could go from boy to uncle to grandpa without ever landing on the position of man. And so when we put that on a sign, we had a march scheduled for the next day. We came up with that sign the night. The sign was printed in the print shop of the AME church. So when men saw them the next morning, folks were running, I want a sign like that. I want that kind of sign to put around my neck when we march.
So why the underline of am?
Well, speaking personally, I am. And if you think for a moment, these are the lowest of the low paid. These are garbage men. I made friends with a fellow by the name of Ed Gillis. He had worked for the city for 20 years. He earned $7.80 a day. He wasn't complaining about it. I mean, he was much more committed to getting a resolution to the today problem. He'd worry about the rest of it later on. But it gave him a sense of pride. And for the work that they did, they simply want to be respected for it. And I had an interview with a reporter, and I said, when's the last time you told your garbage man thank you? You know, when is the last time you told him you appreciate what he does? And folks said, well, I never thought about it. And that was almost symptomatic of the conditions that these men had. And that was across the city. It wasn't uniquely to the white community or the black community. They didn't get respect from anybody because nobody understood what they did. Most of us, we put the garbage out back and we figure it just disappears. And the fact that they wanted to be respected for what they did and to be treated as a man. And that became a piece of glue that you couldn't change to this day.